Hi, Susana Malcora. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hello.
Hi,
How
Pedro.
are you? Good.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Hola Pedro,
Hola,
¿cómo
Susana,
estás?
¿qué tal?
De nuevo.
Pedro, hello, Tanya from Slovenia. Do we have sun sitting order or
So we have
you don't know?
people.
I'm sitting here.
I'm starting from the Indonesia,
Oh, I do remember. Yes.
Singapore.
Yeah, I do remember. Yeah. And where are you now?
Invited from 32 states. We are trying to find a replacement. But somebody from Brazil, of course, South Africa, Kenya. I mean, it's a broad.
Yes.
I was just following now, so they had a
Okay, okay.
In order, you will have a timer over there. I need you to.
I'm also a speaker.
But I need
And
to
he's
speak with
also
the moderator.
the moderator. She will be here in a second.
Okay. No, si es que necesitamos.
Otherwise, if there is no moderator, we can talk. We are all adult enough.
Okay, but the thing is. Okay, we're going to start. Just to sit on the chat. You're going to have a. When.
Yeah, but finish. So is it 45
Keep
minutes or
adding
1 hour?
chairs.
Yeah, but they keep adding chairs.
It's 45 minutes, so
I was saying that they keep adding
Yeah, I
chairs.
know. Why they add chairs?
I don't know.
We have 4 speakers and 1 moderator.
Yeah, I'm looking for the moderator. I don't know where she is.
They're looking for the moderator. And is it 6
Pero ¿cómo
now?
estás? Estuvo muy interesante la conversación de hoy sobre la democracia en Brasil.
Sí, ¿no?
Bueno, preocupantemente interesante, obviamente, ¿no?
Sí.
¿Tú crees que en serio iba a país?
Si fuera hoy. Bueno, no soy. Pero
Pero en algún punto no cuando confrontó con Trump había hecho
sí.
pero eso se perdió.
No, yo creo que se perdió un poco. Y o sea, la sandía con la pintura del labio, o sea,
Por eso
siempre.
siempre.
Por eso yo digo, si cuando no está como desesperado, y es un candidato, no es un bueno candidato. Sí, como candidato. Sí.
Okay. Yeah, I will be there. Yeah, I will be there. Yeah,
Come for the application.
yeah.
O sea, todo su vínculo con el Estado de Brasil, que es el río, tenía de asesores, no sé, cosas así. Entonces, eso no apreció. Eso va a empezar, y yo me imagino que ahí va a bajar un poco. Pero no que nada, pero que, o sea, el país está bien, ¿no? O sea, pero hay un sentimiento. Sí,
For you, I will definitely.
I know her, but she didn't remember me. But you told me that. Hello. Susana Malcorra. You are sort of busy these days.
Yes, we will start in a few seconds. We are waiting for the moderator. She was somewhat late. And Suzanne, she said it's a must that you have to come because all foreign ministers, all very majority, she said, listen, only one from the region we wanted to have you to represent the position.
No, she's from Ecuador. She's from Ecuador. So, she's Ecuadorian. She's Ecuadorian. We are, as you know, we are pushing hard for women. Your president is your
Say that again.
Hello again.
Hi, how
I'm
are
ready
you?
to pop quiz you.
But why did they add another chair? Did they add another speaker?
There's one.
the minister is
two
Yeah,
coming.
the minister is coming. I saw him. Yes.
Yes.
So he should be sitting here. Perfect.
Yeah, in the
You sit
middle.
there.
I guess maybe. Now I'm thinking how many.
No, I think we have there's
No, no. I'll sit here. You sit there.
Okay. It's the same, eh?
Huh?
What makes I could sit there, no problem. You know what Winston Churchill used to say?
What?
The head of the table is where I sit. He was very self-assured, you know that.
It's like you're in front of Gregory's.
I saw you're a member of this foundation. I didn't know
Yes.
that.
I'm advising.
And Jesus Rodriguez is there. You have told me that at a point, but I didn't associate you with even the foundation. Camille.
Test. If everybody could please get seated.
¿Qué tal? ¿Qué tal?
Gusto verte.
Me lo voy que-
I think you are there and they are.
While we're getting situated, this will, if anybody needs translation, there are translation devices in the back. All you need is your ID, because we're going to be conducting this in English, because my Spanish is X. I speak Puerto Rican Spanish, and probably nobody will understand that here, so unless you know Bad Bunny very well. Okay. All right, are we comfortable? Okay. My name is Nomi Keykonst, and I am an American former journalist, recovering journalist, activist, and I am very honored to be moderating this panel titled The Clash of Hypocrisies, The Future of Global Order. I might be biased, but I do think that this is the most important conversation of the day because we are all living it. And as an American, as somebody who lives in the United States, I can tell you waking up every morning to tweets that impact the entire world, not necessarily reassuring. And I know many people in this room are doing the best to navigate some of our administration's choices that have shifted alliances, impacted treaties, the economy, as we're seeing, and of course, trade and so many other things. So I am not going to take up this space. We have the experts here, so I will introduce everybody from the top, and then we'll just get right to it. Okay, we have, hopefully I said your name right, Pedro Abramovai. I don't speak Portuguese. Pedro is the Vice President of Programs at Open Society Foundations and the former Special Advisor of the Minister of Justice for Brazil. And of course, we have the Honorable Foreign Minister of Spain, José Manuel Alvarez. My Spanish okay there? We're very honored to have you here. He was also the former Secretary General for International Affairs for the European Union. And then we also have the Honorable Tanja Fajon. That right? The Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Affairs for Slovenia. And Susana Malcorra, who is the former Foreign Minister of Argentina and Chef de Cabinet of the Executive Office at the UN under Ban Ki-moon. She's also the co-founder and president of GWL Voices. And then we have Abdulaziz Sagar, the founder and chairman of Gulf Research Center, and a Saudi strategic expert specializing in international politics and regional security. So I will start off, since we are in home territory here. Foreign Minister Alvarez, I have to ask you, Spain is taking the lead under your leadership and the Prime Minister on so many issues that I think a lot of countries in the past probably were a little bit more cautious about speaking out on. There are injustices in the world, and of course we're speaking about Gaza, but specifically calling out Netanyahu, whether it's withholding weapons or calling out his actions under his leadership in Gaza, and just the other day, his actions in Lebanon, in stating that he was potentially going to create another Gaza in Lebanon. How does Spain see its role in the EU right now in leading, and do you find that the order within NATO and in the EU, in terms of guidance and leadership on these critical issues, is shifting? Are there other countries in the EU that are going to be following your lead, and what does that dynamic look like right now?
We are in a real predicament right now in Europe. We have to decide that, like everyone else in the world, whether we want world order or we want the chaos of war, whether we want law or the opposite, that is the force. whether we believe in the principles that are on the very basic construction of European Union, democracy, peace. European Union is a construction of peace, or not anymore. For Spain, it's very clear. We have a foreign policy that is coherent and that upholds the same principles everywhere, whether it's in Ukraine, in Gaza, in Lebanon, whether the kids have fair hair and blue eyes or they have dark hair and dark eyes, are the same principles. International law, international humanitarian law, not accepting that war can be the substitution of a foreign policy. And Europe is specifically about that. If we lose our values, we are not just giving away very nice ideas. We are giving away the very same essence of what we are. And more than ever, it is necessary, that's what we want for Europe and what the rest of the world, what we call today the Global South, expects from Europe, is that we uphold very high the flag of the principles of the United Nations Charter. And actually the hope for humanity is an alliance, and a strong alliance, between progressive forces here in Europe and progressive forces in the Global South. Exactly what we will be doing here. That's where most of humanity stands, because the paradox is that we are many more that continue believing in international law, in peace, and in the United Nations than those that prefer war. But of course, they are very strong, and they seem having the leads. But they don't have the lead. They are isolated. We are the majority of the people.
That's a very good pivot to Slovenia, because in your country, just a couple of days ago, there was a call for a referendum, a NATO referendum. If that referendum were to go through, Foreign Minister, how does Slovenia see itself in the middle of Europe, surrounded by what were allies and neighbors? How do you see Slovenia interacting with the rest of the EU? And might I ask, is this a version of what is now failed Orbanism in his illiberalism, but is it a result of Orban's leadership?
Yes, thank you. I have to do a step back because I'm still an acting foreign minister after 4 years and just after the elections we held in Slovenia. And the announcement that you just said, that Slovenia will have a referendum on exiting NATO, was done by a newly elected Speaker of the Parliament just a few days ago. And where we could see that the shift, even though that the current coalition with the Prime Minister Golob won as a relative winner of the election, the shift goes to the right-wing government, the fourth government of Janez Janša, and this is just these days happening. So we could hear from the newly elected Speaker of the Parliament, my first visit is going to be Moscow, and we'll put Slovenia for the referendum exit NATO. I mean, being 4 years a minister, together working with Jose, we were very much like-minded countries. And Slovenia was, for the last 4 years, a country that was an honest broker. I think we were capable to build a credible position around the globe. We were 2 years in a Security Council, and I'm proud to say that we were very consistent on exact values that were mentioned now. This is the international law, the humanitarian law, the UN Charter, the multilateralism. We were very vocal with the Middle East crisis. Just today we issued a new letter about the situation that is horrible, not to mention Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, and others. But we were also very consistent with having the same principles in the Security Council and else, that we address the crisis around the globe. So there were no double standards that we ever were criticized. We are a small country, and I have to say that I'm very proud for the last 4 years that we remain this credibility. Be it the war in Sudan, Middle East, or Ukraine, we had same standards and principles. And we were able to listen, to hear, and also try to understand each other. I wish we stay on that track because honestly, for the country as Slovenia, there is no alternative than having effective multilateralism and international also accountability. It is not about, what is convenient, but what is consistent. And I wish we stay on that track. I'm in difficult times currently that the situation in Slovenia might change. But I hope the right forces. I often said in the past, we were on the right side of the history. In many conflicts and the geopolitics, you see that we live in a world that is rapidly changing. We have transactional relations, we have multipolar world, we see more rules of the power than power of the rules, but we have to remain consistent as progressive forces. We should not give up to hypocrisies or to that the world is shaken and the world rules are shaken. We have to diminish that, or we have at least to reduce and build on the reforms and build on these common values. And this is what we are doing here, and I really have high hopes on our progressive mobilization, but also on the Spanish government. We are very little currently in the EU that are still really fighting for the right international law, humanitarian law, and not having double standards.
Can I ask you a prediction? May I ask if you think that the referendum will pass or fail?
Sorry?
Do you think the referendum will pass or fail?
I hope there will be no real referendum, to be very frank, because it's about our collective security. And there are no easy discussions, like in Spain, when we got to the discussions on the military budget. I think we are pretty much the same. It's not easy to convince people that we have to make this huge expenditure on the account of social state and else. But we were committed as the government to reach the goals. So difficult to say, but I think there is still a solid majority that we need our collective security and also better NATO alliance.
Minister Macorra, you're in Argentina. I don't even know how to ask this question. Milei, what do you believe his vision of the world order is? And will it spread to Chile and other parts of South America? And how does South America space, I know it's a large continent, but how does their relationship with the rest of the world, given the traditional world order, shift under Milei's leadership?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with such an interesting group of friends and colleagues. First of all, I tend not to speak about my country being outside of my country, but I will answer your question. It is clear that the vision that President Milei has is a vision of full alignment with the US and Israel. Full stop. I don't think that's a vision. I think that's pure alignment. And that's what worries me about the lack of vision. Because at this very moment, it is critical to bring together member states, governments, that care about the world order. And, the Charter had embedded in its founding words a tension. The tension between the sovereign participation of all member states, all states, big and small, all have a vote, and the fact that the powerful ones are the ones to act with restraint in order to secure the world order. Well, that's not happening any longer. Restraint as a key factor has been forgotten by at least 2 of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council recently. And that's critical. We need to go back and find ways to put restraint to the ones who have forgotten about it. And I see no other way. You spoke about both ministers spoke about the need for the progressive governments to come together behind the system. I will say, add to progressive, responsible governments, because we need responsibility to, again, put restraint on peace and security, address the question of the new race of arms, different arms, trade, for example, all the focus that there is on rare minerals, all the focus that there is on tapping into resources in whatever powerful way one can. And we also need to go back to the simple value of the global public goods. And if the big ones are not doing it, we need a group of progressive, responsible member states that say we stand together to make it happen. And I don't see my country being part of that, unfortunately.
You mean it? No. I was going to make a joke about the saw. Abdulaziz.
Yes. Oops.
Does anybody have any paper towels? We have a spill up here.
We always like to call it when there's a water spill is a good luck. So, so maybe the war will end now.
I'll take that. If anybody knows right now, the world order is shifting in Arab states. The Strait of Hormuz has impacted the entire supply chain, energy, food insecurity in places like Africa right now, as we're seeing. It's also put pressure on so many of these Arab states that I think many thought were endlessly powerful given the oil reserves. How do you see the shift in power in the Arab states right now, and where do you see it going given the wars and obviously what's happening with Iran?
Well, first, I'm very pleased and happy to be in second home for me. I call it Spain. It's a great country. We have a very special relation historically between the Arab world and Spain. So I'm happy to be home. I think we were all surprised by the reaction the Iranians have taken, and that's because of the absence of the international law. There is no respect for the international law. This is supposed to be a passage that cannot be controlled by any country or cannot impose any tariff in it or cannot disturb any shipment. 20% of the energy that goes to the rest of the world passes through that one. Yet we have Iran insisted to close it. And now we have the second turn, which is sanction on the sanctioner. In other words, if Iran tried to impose sanction on the Strait of Hormuz, the Americans are imposing sanction on the Iranian goods, vessels, and movement. And this is why today there was maybe 2 or 3 vessels that have passed through that one. Why is that happening? Because we have no more balance. We have no more real order in the world where we have a balance. We used to have Soviet Union at the Cold War era. There is somebody bearing in mind something. And now we have a single decision. They're free to do anything. They respect the law inside the U.S. and it's been implemented. But when it goes outside the U.S., they just take it and they get carried away with anything they like, starting from 2003, 2001 in Afghanistan, going all the way to the first war that was imposed in the 2 weeks in June last year, to this war. So it's a single decision, has no basis for anything. Region were not consulted, by the way. Region, they were not asked their opinion. The U.S. decided with Israel to go and launch the war without having to consult the region, without having to ask the region, what do you feel, and the consequences that we see. So today, this is a result of a single decision, no balance of power, no order in place, really, and then trusting we live today in an era where we have to look at to the tweet and see what the president is going to say. We don't live in an era where we respect the international law, we know how things will go, and then the different power, the right of people, and in all different levels, international law has not been respected, unfortunately. So this is the result of that one. And the whole globe is paying the cost of such a decision for that one. We're not endorsing Iran nuclear program, by the way. We are always against the Iran nuclear program. We're not endorsing the long-range missiles policy that Iran have adopted. We're not endorsing any interventionist or expansionist policy by supporting militia anywhere. All of that, we are totally against it. But at the same time, we felt that dealing with such an issue would need to have a different approach. We need to see, we understand the US are part of the regional security. They're part and parcel. They are involved in every conflict in the region. But at the same time, that does not mean you go full-fledged and do everything you want without the region being involved in that.
So given the state of affairs and the world order shifting and alliances shifting, in Brazil, with the fall of Bolsonaro and the revival of Lula, it does give many progressives hope. Democratic institutions have been completely wrecked by Bolsonaro. Faith in government has been wrecked, but Lula being back, how much work has to be done to restore faith, restore the institutions, let's just begin with that, but also faith with the Brazilian people that democracy can work? And I'm specifically asking this question because I do think that if, say, Netanyahu were to get out of power, or my president would lose power, or have maybe some checks and balances, the question is, what's next? Is the toothpaste out of the tube? Is there any way to go back, given that alliances are shifting all over the world?
No, thank you, and such a pleasure to be here, and especially kind of this place with so many people from different parts of the world, rallying not only against something, but with the idea of supporting new hopes in different parts of the world. It's very exciting for everyone. So I think in Brazil, what we are seeing right now, of course, it was a big effort after one of the main examples of an authoritarian leader taking the country and trying to destroy democratic institutions, not only through the slow pace that is almost traditional now authoritarianism from this century, but also with a clear coup d'etat, right, with the military in the end of the process, right? I think there are many lessons to learn from Brazil, but of course many concerns. I think that the importance of President Lula's leadership in building a coalition to protect democracy in Brazil, putting as running mate to run his former opponent, Geraldo Alckmin, as the vice president, and trying to build a coalition around the idea of rebuilding democracy in Brazil was really important. And we were debating Brazil in another panel this morning, and it is very important to remember, Brazil is one of the places in which democracy has actually delivered, right? Since the Constitution in 1988, the country was able to build, to create an universal health public system, to end with illiteracy, to reduce inequality, to stabilize the economy, right? In ways that few countries have seen it. That's a product of democracy. And many times we forget that, right? And I think a big part of the attack on our institutions in Brazil was trying to forget what democracy has delivered in Brazil. And I think that's what President Lula has been doing. But of course, it's not enough, because we get right now, and election is really tied, like the polls are really tied between Bolsonaro's son that is in jail, which I think it's also an important thing that Brazil has done differently from your country, for example, that was able to create accountability for those who attempted against democracy in Brazil. But I think right now the risk comes exactly because it is hard to produce and to show that democracy can continue to deliver for those people, right? That there is an energy coming from democracy that can promise something that is beyond just defending the status quo. I think that's one of the main challenges that we need to put on the table. And I think there is, just to connect, I think, back to the discussion here today, one of the moments that was most important for President Lula was when he was able to affirm Brazilian sovereignty. And I think that's something that we are seeing in many parts of the world too, and almost as a gift that President Trump is giving for us who are democracy lovers, which is we have now the ability, progressives have now the ability to take back the flag of sovereignty and the flag of national interest that was hypocritical raised by the far right in many of our countries. But when Trump comes with his speech asking countries to put America's first, they realized that their project was not a project around sovereignty. It was a project around the interests that, are the same interests behind Trump, Bolsonaro, Orban, and many others in different parts of the world. So what we are seeing right now is the possibility that we have as countries to build the sovereignty around inclusion, to show that what we have in common in our countries is not the hate and the exclusion, but is exactly the fact that we share the same destiny, and this destiny needs to be built about exactly building public health system, child care, and possibility of future for an inclusion and reducing inequality in the different parts of the world. I think that's when we think about what are the possibilities and the lessons that we learned from this period, is exactly how we can reclaim sovereignty and engage in the world in a way through solidarity and not through exclusion, as the far right is asking from all of us.
So we've been talking about geopolitics, but there's this other factor that seems to be infiltrating pretty much every single one of our countries, and that's the oligarchs and how much they are behind this new global order. And really, I think the question I'm asking is it the oligarchs that are benefiting from this? Is it another country like China? Who do you think benefits from this world order? And, is it about class, or is it about something much bigger that most of our voters in our countries would not be thinking of firsthand? Take it down the line.
That's a very good question, because the real challenge that we have right now is that there is a shift in history. Traditionally, it was one state that was challenging others. And it was the power of one state challenging the power of other states, or the territory or the sovereignty, as very rightly you indicated. Right now, it's much more complicated. There are governments that are included in that. There are, of course, techno-oligarchs that are also included in that. There are certain political forces that we could all situate in the extreme right, but some of them are almost into a sort of anarcho-extreme right, and they create a new movement that partially it's in the hands of the states, partially it's in the hands of super billionaires, and partially it's in the hands of political forces. And all that, it's a new movement that, of course, it's moving forward because of the digital world that is allowing it to move everywhere. But at the end, the essence is either we continue, and there are progressive forces and progressive governments, we are at the heart of that, upholding general interest, or, and this movement, even when it's in the hands of some governments, you uphold private interest. Because that's the real challenge that we have right now. The same people that are rejecting international law and world order at an international level are the same people that reject the European project at a regional level and democracies at a national level. Because all those levels puts everyone at the same level and protect the general interest. And what they want is to be liberated from anything that can be considered law, democracy, a state, a structure with predictable rules to make sure that what prevails is the law of the strongest, the law of the jungle. If you are the strongest state, you take wherever you want from other states. If you are wealthier than anyone else, you take wherever you want. and so on and so on. That's the real challenge, and that what makes things much more complicated. Sometimes you are facing a state actor. Sometimes it's a private enterprise, private company, usually in the digital sector. Sometimes it's a political force. But all of them hit on the same thing. Let's not allow the general interest to prevail. Let's make it all private, individual, specific interest.
Maybe I start by saying when people realize that the rules apply differently to those like oligarchs or with capital or with power, then I think they lose trust in the rules altogether. So I think that it is important always to stress equalities, rules-based order, international law, accountability, together with responsibility. I often say that looking the world, how it's spinning around, and the big powers, again, looking from the position of a country that doesn't have, it's not a military power. It doesn't have mineral or natural resources. It is the only thing we have. It's an effective multilateralism and international law together with accountability. And it is where our commitment lies. So when you see that there are no rules or a lot of inequalities around the world, people start disbelieving altogether. And I think we are not really looking to today's world where you see that it's a lot of pragmatism or a principled pragmatism or national interests and not what is the global order, that I think people, and also in the EU, I feel that the countries start really looking more, you know, what is the national interest, and this is making us very weak. And currently looking the geopolitics, and not only political situation, also economic, Europe is really weakened in the global world. And I think we will have a lot of catch-up to do, but we need to raise awareness and strong leadership, what is at stake. I think we are at maybe one very crucial point whether Europe will manage to rebuild trust, resilience, strength to put itself back on the world map. And it all goes hand in hand. I wish to see, you know, that we would have more effective multilateralism. Yes, we need to adapt it to today's geopolitics. And together with accountability, the work of international tribunals, it is really diminished. And this is a big danger. So it's a lot of work we have to do, but I still believe that the awareness is there, also on our European continent, maybe at a critical juncture, but that we need to build also partners and allies, maybe out of traditional boxes, because we need to build on like-minded partners and friends that we can, sometimes I wish to see, you know, as I had an experience in the United Nations now for 2 years, if more than 190 countries would just recommit on what the leaders signed 80 years ago to take care for a collective security and peace, we wouldn't live in times of so many conflicts. So to recommit back to the values that we established and created 80 years ago, and to reform our systems. It will require a lot of courage, but I think we should start rebuilding the confidence among ourselves and among like-minded partners.
You ask who is winning. And when you see the trillionaires, when you add up their fortunes. They are much larger than many countries' GDPs altogether. They are the winners so far. And how do they win? They win by destroying institutions, by renegating from any kind of regulation, limitation on tax, on the implementation of their technologies. They are against systems. They are against institutions. And that's where we need to recognize that unless we revalue the institutions and find ways to recreate the importance of those institutions that, by the way, need to change. There is no denial that there is a need for improvement, a need for a refoundational commitment, as the minister said. But that only comes to fruition if we find enough forces together committed to, I will argue, probably an utopian perspective of the future. Because what they do best is they first make us cynical. And then we evolve to being nihilist. Nothing can be done. Nothing can be improved. Yes, it can be done. Yes, it can change. Yes, it can be refoundational in light of what the needs of today. But we cannot allow to these few people take control of the world the way they're doing it. And they're doing it. Because behind the Make America Great Again, there is not America. There are certain parts of America. So that is critical, and that's, again, why it is so important to have forums like this, where people that think from a different angle come together and decide to move forward.
Thank you. I don't know what to add after all the good statement has been said by the distinguished panelists, but I think we will all emphasize that to have a single player worldwide will be difficult. I mean, look at today, Europe in need of the US because of Ukraine, Russia today under sanction, they can't move. China has been put under tough situation with regard to their tariff and with regard to the oil supply and their energy requirement. By the way, 4 million barrels a day comes out of the Gulf to China, 1.5 comes out of Iran. So literally more than 55% of China import of oil come out of the state of Hormuz. And to have a single player and a single decision deciding and determining how the rest of the world can see it, I think it's quite dangerous, and I think we need to have a collective effort between those whom they believe. And we need to have enough resilience from our side, and we need to build our own strength together to put, we have lost the history of the balance of power. We lost the history of the resistance we have. We've lost a lot of these things. I think we need to put it back again together. We need to have countries and government whom they believe in that, and people whom they believe in that. Otherwise, they're just going to do whatever they like, and then the only thing we are supposed to do is to obey the order and listen to that. Thank you.
It's absolutely impossible to understand this new model of authoritarianism without looking into its relationship with oligarchs and with corruption, right? If you look at Bolsonaro, Trump, Milei, Netanyahu, all of them, right? Corruption and the personal and individual interest comes before the national interest, and they create a facade, right, of national interest to protect their individual interest. And for them, that's why it's so important for them to destroy all accountability institutions, right? Because accountability is what protects democracy, right? The checks and balances, and civil society, the press, and the judiciary, right? All of them are institutions that both protect democracy, but also go after corruption and the oligarchs. At the national level and at the international level, all the structure of kind of the accountability in the global order was really important, right, to make those people accountable, and of course would attack their relationship with those oligarchs. And so we need to understand that part of the problem, right? That when they are attacking democracy, they are protecting their individual interests and the individual interests of the economic forces that they want to continue to benefit themselves. But in order to rebuild that, we need to understand that it's not true also that the former order was going after oligarchs, right? The former order had different ways and many times hypocritical ways to protect the oligarchs. It created, I wouldn't say it's worse than now, definitely not, right? But if we understand the need to rebuild things, we need to understand that to rebuild things, we need to produce an order, and that's why it's so important to be here. That will rebuild an order that will have accountability, but will not tolerate the double standards that we had before. Right? If we want to believe the international legal organizations and the role, we can't use them as kind of and try to protect them, but say it will only apply to certain countries, right? If you want to protect the institution, the democratic institution, the judiciary, the press, they need to serve the interests of the people, and I think that's one of the main discussions that that when we are in a place like this, that we want to make sure that the looking forward right now is not looking back into the status quo that we had before the current attacks, but it's to build something that will really attack the different oligarchs that were already corrupting democracy in many parts of the world.
Okay, my last question, and then I think we have a few minutes for... No questions? No more questions? Okay. The timer did not work on here, just so you know. Okay, well, how about a thumbs up or thumbs down for the last question? Is there a way to restore the old order and make it better? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Okay, good. I'll leave you with this. Our president is going to lose in the midterms, and so there will be a little bit of checks and balances in the United States. So I will just leave that there. A little bit of hope. Thank you all for coming, and hopefully... gracias. Gracias. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting us. Thank you. I have a timer. It doesn't work.
So I look forward... No, I'm not going. No, I have to go back to Madrid. Yeah.